Great day, awesome people! On behalf of Grade 12 research teachers, we hope that all is well with you. For today's discussion, we are going to talk about the introduction section in Imrad format. I know that you are already familiar with this since it was the lesson last week, right? But first, let me enumerate with you the outcomes of learning. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to identify the guidelines and format and writing an introduction in Imrad. Compose a well-written introduction which follows the 3 rhetorical moves. Identify the purposes and steps in reviewing literature and create research paradigm by following the steps and guidelines. Now, you may probably ask, what is an introduction? Let us start it by giving its definition. The introduction is the beginning of your research paper and provides background for your research topic, helping the reader understand the motivation for conducting the study. In addition, it basically answers the questions: what is the problem? Any existing solutions? Or what is the best solution? You may also ask, what do I have to achieve? Or have I achieved what I set? Furthermore, it is important to take note the following section in introduction. Please take note that it may vary depending upon the reference you use in writing an introduction. We start with the nature and scope of the problem or the objective of the study, followed by reviewing of related literature or RRL, your hypothesis. Lastly, approach used in the study and justification of this approach. At this point, let's talk about the first point, which is the nature and scope of the problem or objective of the study. When we say nature of the problem, it is more likely the general idea of it, or you are stating the background of your study. To be specific, let us define the scope of the study. Thesis notes identify scope as the boundaries of the study in terms of subject, objectives, facilities, area, time frame, and the issues to which the research is focused. Here are some sample phrases that express the scope of the study. First, the coverage of the study. You could also use the second one. The study consists of, and the third, the study covers. You may also use this study is focused on. Actually, class, there are some other phrases that can use to express the scope of the study. Now, for a deeper understanding on the first point, let us also define what is the objective of the study. A research objective is a concrete statement describing what the research is trying to achieve. Sharma 2014. In short, the research objectives are the specific accomplishments the researcher aims to achieve at the end of the study. In your research, what are the research objectives you want to accomplish? I hope you're thinking about it now. And now, after identifying the nature and scope of the problem or the objective of the study, we now proceed on the second point or section, the review of related literature or RRL. A literature review is a written summary of journal articles, books, and other documents that describes the past and current state of information on the topic of your research study. Creswell 2010. Its purpose is to orient the reader about concepts, ideas, theories, or other reading materials in the past that is relevant to your study. You may be asking, what is the purpose of reviewing related literature and studies? Well, to answer that specific question, you reanalyze related written works to your study for the following purposes. First, to find out the connection of your research to the current conditions or situations of the world. Next, to know more about theories or concepts underlying your research and to learn from them with respect to your own research study. Third, to discover the relation of your research with previous research studies. Fourth, to obtain information on the accuracy or relevance of your research questions. And lastly, to familiarize yourself with technical terms related to your research. Now, you may probably ask the steps on conducting literature review. So how are we going to do that? First, we need to identify key terms for what? To use this in your research for related literature. Second, locate literature about by consulting several types of materials and databases, including those available at an academic library and on the internet or online sources, which is very much available for the recent situation that we have. Third, critically evaluate and select the literature for your review. Fourth, organize the literature you have selected by abstracting or taking notes on the literature and developing a visual diagram of it if you desire. And lastly, write literature review that reports summaries of the literature for inclusion in your research report. Now, for the third point or section, we now proceed on the hypothesis. This part of discussion is specifically for those of you who have hypotheses in your study. Because of this reason, that a research can be conducted without any hypothesis. However, you can also construct as many hypotheses as long as it is parallel and appropriate to your study. When we say hypothesis, it primarily arises from different conclusions accompanied with a set of tested and valid researches and facts to be proven as they conduct research methods. In short, this is the tentative answer or explanation for certain behaviors, phenomena, or events which occurred or will occur. McGeegan, 1978. There are two types of hypothesis. The first one is the null hypothesis. Let us define it. It specifies that there is no difference between two or more situations, groups, outcomes, or the prevalence of a condition or phenomenon. How about the second one, which is the alternative hypothesis? It specifies that there will be a difference but does not specify its magnitude between two or more situations, groups, outcomes, or the prevalence of a condition or phenomenon. Here are the examples for null hypothesis. Let's start with descriptive type of research. Let's say, for example, we have the study about the leadership styles as correlates of organizational commitment among DPRO faculty members. What could be the null hypothesis on this title? Good job! Let's see if your answer is the same with this. There is no significant relationship between leadership styles and organizational commitment. Remember that when we say null hypothesis, it signifies that there is no difference between two or more situations, groups, outcomes, or phenomenon. Well, the example for experimental research is: there is no significant difference in wound length using the solution of annona muricata and hydrogen-enriched water. How about example in alternative hypothesis? Let us use the same example earlier in descriptive research. Leadership styles as correlates of organizational commitment among DPRO faculty members. What could be the alternative hypothesis on this? Let's see. There is a significant relationship between leadership styles and organizational commitment. Good job! You probably answered it right. And the example for experimental research is: there is a significant difference in wound length using the solution A of annona muricata in hydrogen-enriched water. I hope you already know the difference between null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Again, a research can be conducted without any hypothesis. However, you can also construct as many hypotheses as long as it is parallel and appropriate to your study. At this point, let's discuss the last one, which is the approach used in this study. But first, let's define the research approach. Research approach are the procedures and plans from broad assumptions to specific methods of data gathering, analysis, and interpretation. In research writing, the discussion of your research approach is important regardless of the research type that you used. There are two common types of approach. First is the deductive approach, which is specifically used in quantitative research. It moves from general information to specific information of your research and aims to test on existing theory. And the other one is inductive approach, which is specifically used in qualitative research. This one moves from specific information to general information and aims to develop a theory. Again, inductive aims to develop a theory, while the deductive is testing an existing theory. And deductive, general information to specific information, while inductive moves from specific information to general information. Furthermore, inductive approach is commonly used when there are no available literature or theory for your research problem to test and adopt. However, at the end of research investigation, the conclusion of this research approach may not be proven and be invalidated due to lack of validated resources. Let's focus on deductive approach, since this approach is specifically used in quantitative research. This approach always begins with testing related data and theory to specify the data. You cannot use this approach if there are no theory or related literature available. Hence, the conclusion of this research can only be validated by the related theories and literature. These are the 4 stages of this research approach. First, start with an existing theory, followed by formulate a hypothesis based on existing theory. Then, collect data and test your hypothesis. And lastly, analysis of results and confirmation. All of this section that I've discussed with you in introduction is needed for the purpose of reference for the next discussion that we're going to have, which is, now I'm going to discuss with you the 3 rhetorical moves that can be used in writing an introduction. It was introduced by Swalls 1990 in his course or Create a Research Space. The table below details the 3 moves. The first move is establishing a research territory, which it describes the current state of knowledge and research on the topic. It has sub-moves with a sample language that you can use, the first column and the third one. First sub-move show that the research area is important, problematic, or relevant in some way. The sample language that you can use: first, evidence suggests that X is among the most important factors for. Next, you could also use existing research recognizes the critical role played by. Second sub-move in Move 1 is introduce and review previous research in the field. And the sample language for this are data from several studies suggest that, and the other one, extensive research has shown. Now let's proceed on the second move, which is establishing an issue. It establishes motivation for the study. Usually, this move is short and can be addressed in just one or several sentences. One or more of these are included as the sub-move for Move 2. First, claim something is wrong with the previous research, which is the sample language for this is Smith's analysis does not take into account. Then, another sub-move, highlight a gap in the field. And the sample language that you can use for this is previous studies on X have not dealt with. Followed by the third sub-move, which is raising a question where research in field is unclear. And the sample language for this is research on the subject has been unable to specify whether. And lastly, contribute something additional to the field. And the sample language for this last sub-move is: the study seeks to obtain data which will help to address these research gaps. At this point, let's talk about the last move, which is occupying the niche. This move shows how your research fills the niche and brings new perspectives to the field. And one or more of these are included as the sub-moves. The first sub-moves is outline your purposes and state the nature of your research, which was discussed earlier on our discussion. And the sample language that you could use on this sub-move is: the purpose of this investigation is to explore the relationship between. The next sub-move is: state your hypothesis or research questions you seek to answer, which is also discussed earlier. And the sample language that you could use on this sub-move is: we investigate the following research question. Then, the third sub-move in move 3 is: share your findings. And the sample language that you could use on this is: this study provides new insights into. Followed by the last move, which is elaborating on the value of your research. And the sample language that you could use on here is: the present research explores, for the first time, the effects of. And lastly, outline the structure that the research paper will follow. And the sample language that you could use on the last sub-move is: this paper has been divided into 4 parts, or the first part deals with. You may see the example on these 3 rhetorical moves on the copy of your Module 7. Now for the last part of our discussion. Okay, this is the last part. We will talk about research paradigm. You may probably ask how to create a research paradigm. But before answering that, let us first define what is all about research paradigm. Research paradigm is the approach or research model on how will you conduct your research, which shows the methodologies, process, and approach. There are 2 models used in research that can help you to create your own research paradigm. First is the theoretical framework and conceptual framework. However, we will focus on conceptual framework, which describes the data synthesized by the researchers to link the variables and map out the methods in research investigation. In simplest definition, it is a diagram or model that represents the relationship of research variables, whereas input, process, and output of the research are outlined and often found at the beginning of your research. Consequently, this serves as a blueprint of research investigation, which will be used to show the flow of your research. These are the following steps in making your research conceptual framework. The first step is finalize your research title and identify the variables. And I hope you already done finalizing your research title. Second, identify your research problems so you can focus on finding related literature and studies for your research. Third, collect related literature and studies relevant to your research topic. And the fourth one is conduct a literature review and sort out the important theories and studies that you can adopt to construct your research investigation. That's why it is important to study on how are we going to conduct the literature review, which we have discussed earlier, the 5 steps on conducting literature review. It is needed in making your conceptual framework. And the 5th one is you can now start to generate the conceptual framework of your research after conducting a literature review and sorting out the important theories on this. And the 6th one, construct your conceptual framework using your variables, research problem, and altered methodologies acquired in different theories and studies. For the 7th step, create a flowchart, mind map, or diagram which shows your research methods. These are some visual illustrations and its uses to guide you in making a flowchart, mind map, or diagram. You can use circle to indicate your research variables. You can also place it at the center or top of your flowchart or diagram to symbolize your research topic. Or you could also use an arrow. The stick line arrow is used to show relationship between variables. And the third one that you could use is rectangle. This is used to group the variables and theories in your research. And for the last step, for each component, you have to show the variables that influence it. And here is an example. Okay, I hope that this discussion helps you to be guided in writing the introduction using Imrad format. Remember that if you need wisdom, ask our generous God and He will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. That is according to James 1 verse 5 NLT version. Thank you for listening and God bless you.
Happy learning at home with lessons made easy by Olivarian GoTeach. One proud Olivarian.